Good evening to everyone, and Om Shanti, a greeting of peace. I'm very happy to be with you all in Leicester, and maybe there'll be other people who are watching this. My name is Maureen, and I'm in London, and I help coordinate the activities for the Brahma Kumaris around the UK. And most of you will know about the Brahma Kumaris, a spiritual university that really helps to bring spirituality and upliftment to people everywhere. And of course we have a lot of centres around the UK, places of activity, but also in 120 countries, because these things are for everyone of all cultures. And especially in this current climate, it's so important that we share with each other in a way that can uplift, can encourage, can give us all that moral strength to carry on and do what it is that we need to do. And this evening's topic is soul consciousness equals solution consciousness. And I like this very much because it gives a different dimension to problem solving. Often we think that problem solving has to be something that we reason out, think about. And in fact, I studied mathematics at one point, and you have to think in a very linear way about how to solve your problems, equate things with each other. But here, it's really about understanding from the inside, intuitively, what it is that is right, what it is that can work, what it is that will be of benefit to everyone. And I do believe that a real solution is something that's of benefit to all. It's not just of benefit to me or my family or a small group around me, or even just for one nation, but a real solution benefits everybody. And I think often we lose sight of that, don't we? So let's come back to soul consciousness. You may have heard this term before if you've come to our centres, attended our talks or activities. And it's a very specific term. It really means being conscious of who I really am, being conscious of my original true self. Now, it's not as difficult as it sounds. When I first began to study Raj Yoga, now over 40 years ago, I was introduced to the concept of who I am. It's a big question asked in philosophy, who am I? And I was given an answer. 4 words. I am a soul. In fact, in other languages it may be 3 words or 2 words. In English, I am a soul. And this had quite an impact on me. It sounded almost too simple. The soul is the being that empowers the body. And we all know that once the soul leaves the body is lifeless. The body can't do anything. And in fact, it was just a few weeks ago that I was present when a soul did leave out of illness, and it was very gentle. It happened very naturally. This person was a meditator, I would say a yogi. And so in the last part of her life, or in those last moments or hours, she was able to experience for herself deeply that awareness of being a soul, and so was easily and naturally able to leave the body behind at the right time. And there was just a silence around her. There were a few people around, and we all just went into silence. And you could see the contrast. The body became lifeless. And I'm not suggesting that we all have to witness such scenes to understand the soul. We need to understand the soul as we are living alive. But we use a phrase. We say, I am a soul. But we would not say, my soul. Many people say, yes, I have a soul. Well, if you have a soul, you are not the soul. Are you a body that you have a soul? Or am I a soul who has a body? There's a very, very big difference. And when we look at the latter, I, the soul, inhabit this body, call it my costume, call it my vehicle, call it my temple. When we think in that way, this, quite simply, is what is called soul consciousness. And of course, in this consciousness, perspectives begin to change. Our attitude and our thinking begins to change. There are two things that happen. One is that I begin to let go of the labels that have defined me for so long. Yes, labels. Think about that. What is the label that has defined me from birth? All connected with the physical form. The first label, gender. Male, female. And now there are other options in between too. But essentially this, male, female. And then what else defines me? Perhaps culture, perhaps family background, perhaps religion. I would say that religion goes a little deeper than a label, but maybe we can come back to that. But if I just identify with that and lose the meaning behind the things I do or believe, well, it can become a label. Other things, perhaps my profession, perhaps my relationships. And something that very often does define us, perhaps more often than we would really wish, is what others think about us, or what others project onto us. If we take them in, these things begin to define us. Is this what I want? Is this how I wish to live my life? And when we are defined by the labels, you could say, the identities, let's use that term, when I'm defined by the situations around me, what others think of me, then how is it possible to be myself? And how is it possible to then understand who I am and to find the solutions that I need? Because there will always be challenges in life. Every day there will be challenges. And I need those solutions. So one is the letting go of those external identities or influences and becoming free. And in that freedom, there's no longer obligations, no longer expectations, no longer justifications. Now, isn't that freedom? When I define myself by my relationships, I feel very obliged to fulfill certain obligations. Soul consciousness begins to free us so that we can not just serve people's desires, but people's real needs. And the other thing that happens is that I am able to go inside, able to see and experience my real self. And that real self is very beautiful. I'm able to touch my original state of being. And yes, in today's world, people are often so peaceless or angry or whatever the emotion that we begin to think that it's natural. But actually, it's not really natural. The fact that we would rather not be in that state tells us that it is not natural. And so, when I experience my original state of being, I find things that are natural to the self. And I want to stay with those. I enjoy that. So what is natural? My inner state of peace. I am a being of peace. What is natural? I am a loving being. It's very natural to love. And you can see this when there's an opportunity, even for people who you may think are totally negative, when you provide them an opportunity to love and to give and to share their love, something different emerges in them. Something new is released. I remember we've worked a lot in prisons in the UK, and I was in touch with, a group of us in touch with an organisation which worked with young offenders, boys, and the lady who we were working with, she was telling us about a project that they did to help the young men understand what it means to be a father. Because some of them had fathered children, even though they were young. And what they did was that they, of course, they couldn't bring in real live babies, but they took eggs and painted, like a face and wrapped them a little bit like they were a baby. And she said it was amazing to see these guys who you think are just tough and, in that external sense, and how gently, how carefully they took care of these, make-believe babies, eggs, so they were delicate. You couldn't handle them roughly. But she said it was amazing to see the care, the gentleness, the love that was released. Everybody has that inside of them. So peace, love, joy. We want to be happy, don't we? We don't want to be miserable. And truth or wisdom. These are our qualities. And if you put them all together, they make up what we would call inherent goodness. And whatever the person is like, whatever behavior they may be exhibiting, there is, deep down, that inherent goodness that is waiting to be released. And so when I become soul conscious, bring it back to the self, my practice, and we will practice this towards the end of this talk. When I become soul conscious, the I, the soul, becomes conscious of itself, then those beautiful qualities are released in me. And so my awareness of myself becomes very different. And somebody described recently this state of soul consciousness. And they said, actually it was being talked about as the third eye, opening the third eye. That term is used sometimes. And why this, I'll explain in a moment. But she described it as totally being yourself and totally allowing others to be themselves. And I like that very much. Not projecting, not controlling, just enjoying the being of another. And that really makes a huge difference in our relationships. And when we begin to interact in that spirit, what we thought was difficult can very quickly become very easy. We talked about this point here, the center of the forehead. Why? Because this is actually the seat of the being, the seat of the soul. If you want to visualize the soul, it would be a tiny point of light, a very subtle yet very powerful spiritual energy. And it's that point which empowers the whole body. It's that point which expresses itself through the body. So, who is it who is talking to you now? I, the soul, through these organs, I'm talking to you, expressing myself. And who is listening? You souls are listening again through your organs or senses. So it's very interesting, isn't it? We can say one person talking to another, that's true. But when we go deeper, it's one soul interacting with another soul. And when you think of it like that, then the tendency is for there to be more goodness interacting with goodness, rather than negativity interacting with negativity. And I remember one story. It was when it was the mayor of Reykjavik in Iceland some years ago. He's not mayor anymore. And he had a very different spiritual approach. There's a whole story as to how his party came into power. But at one forum we held, he spoke of his experience in the council chamber. And he said that there was one councillor who was speaking, and he was really berating him and telling him, well, you're weak, you're no good, really criticising him. And he said, as I was listening, as you would expect, I could feel this anger welling up inside me. And then I said, hold on, this isn't any good, and this is no good for me. And so then he calmed himself down. And when he got up to speak, he said to him very calmly, he addressed this man, I heard what you said. I heard your opinion about me. But I have a different opinion about myself. And you can do better than that. And he just calmed down the whole situation. And the atmosphere changed. And then he said, my principle is that where there is negativity, I must counteract that with more goodness. Now, that's an attitude to life that will help me see possibilities and solutions. Of course, it's this well-known adage, is the glass half empty or half full? How do I see life? How do I go through life? But if that goodness is emerging from within, I'm much more likely to see possibilities. I'm much more likely to see the goodness in others. And when I interact with their goodness, a very different response is elicited. And that's why those young boys could become loving, when normally they don't express that side of themselves, but yet it is there. And so then, in our relationships, there are solutions. I'm no longer seeing my relationship with you as difficult. If my attitude is that it's difficult, my thinking will be that it's difficult, and the reality will be that it's difficult. I'll be putting out negativity. I'll be wanting to control you. Why are you like this? Why can't you understand me? Why can't you have a bit of compassion? And then what is the result? Resistance, more anger, more disrespect. But if I'm coming to that with the attitude, well, this relationship is good. Perhaps it used to be good. Why can't it be good again? Then I will get a different kind of response. And there will be a solution to whatever it is that is causing a barrier between us. So it's very important to shift our attitude in any situation. And then what happens is that, well, a few things happen. One is that I have a much greater ability to move on. One of the phrases we often use in our spiritual study is, past is past. And you can say, oh, it's a cliche, that's fine to say past is past. So often we hang on to old situations, old arguments. He did this to me, she did that to me, or said that to me. We hold on, and we can't let go. And that colours everything that we do from then on. And we hold on in our thoughts. The situation has passed. It's not a reality anymore. There's that very nice Buddhist story of the two monks who are walking along and they have to cross a river. And then they see that there's a woman who wants to cross the river, but it's too difficult for her. It's a little fast flowing. And so one of the monks picks up the woman and carries her over to the other shore and sets her down. And then the two monks continue on their journey. And the other monk, he can't contain himself. He's a little disturbed, and he says to the first monk, "But brother, you know our disciplines, we should not touch a woman. How come you picked up that woman and took her across the river?" And the other monk replied, "Brother, I picked her up and took her across the river and set her down on the other side. But you are still carrying her." And isn't this what we do? The situation has passed, but we continue to carry it. With soul consciousness, we are so much more able to set our problems down, to leave the past and move on. And it's because we have something greater to replace it with. Things of the past that cause us sorrow are not pleasant to remember. And they're going to influence my attitude, my decision making, my interactions. If I'm experiencing my inherent goodness, I'm experiencing my inner peace, I feel that loving state. Why would I want to hang on to sorrow? But it's right, I need that to replace it. Something stronger, something more powerful, something actually much more real and present. So I can't just say, oh, past is past, it doesn't work. But with soul consciousness, it happens easily. And I say to myself, why do I need to carry these difficulties or hurts any longer? Yes, sometimes I may need help when things have really, really been deep. But many things are not so important, right? Some maybe, but many not so much. And often it's more because I want to prove that I'm right. I won't let go until I've proved to the other person I'm right and they're wrong. But you know, to them, they've forgotten it already. They're not interested. And I'm left with the suffering. So moving on in soul consciousness. Acceptance is part of that. Too often we can't accept things as they are. The situation we're in now, and I know for Leicester it's a difficult situation, back into the lockdown situation. But somehow, if I'm in this situation, as we have been everywhere, well, let me accept and do my best. That's a very different attitude to resisting the situation. Someone who's a very dear friend, he's now well in his 70s, and it must be maybe 10 years ago, something like that, that his wife passed away, and it was quite difficult for him. And then after a few months, as we were talking, and then he said to me, he said, you know, well, I'm on my own now, so I'm going to do this well. And I felt so much respect for him. I thought, what a good, positive attitude. And so he's done many things, many productive things since then. He's not stayed behind in that sorrow, and it's so important. Moving forward, moving on. And it's soul consciousness that makes this easy. because I'm all the time operating from that goodness inside. And yet I'm not naive. This is where wisdom comes in. Wisdom is such a beautiful quality that we all have inside. And I feel it's that wisdom that enables us to have that generosity of spirit. I remember being with a group of religious leaders, and we were with some college students. We had different groups, and then there were question answer, and we were talking about this. How much do you give? Is there a limit to your giving? Do people take advantage? And or do we allow people to take advantage? And one of the students asked about this. Should I just keep on giving? And it was a rabbi who gave the response, and I loved his response. He said, well, God gives us everything in abundance, so we have to give. But he said it with a lot of dignity. Not that I'm giving just because you want something, but I'm giving because I have the abundance from God, and it's the right thing to do. Soul consciousness enables us to develop that generosity of spirit. But it also enables us to be in our own state of dignity. And I have experienced for myself, and I've seen in others, and especially in our elder sisters, many of whom I've known, had the privilege to know, who were there from the 1930s, from the beginning of the Brahma Kumaris. So meditators, for yogis, I would say, for 80 years or more. And I've seen their tremendous dignity and their strength, because they're so firm in who they are, and so firm in their faith and their connection with God. And so they're always giving, constantly giving, but yet no one takes advantage. Because what is being given with that wisdom, is being given with that dignity, on the basis of truth. And so the person, instead of taking it and using it to maybe take advantage, that person takes it for upliftment, takes it to use in their lives. And I've seen people will come to them, and perhaps they have a very difficult situation, and you can see on their faces how difficult it is. And yet after a little while, after they leave the presence of such souls, such individuals who have that soul consciousness and connection with the divine, they come away and their face has totally changed. So what changes your face? It's not makeup. It changes from the inside. When the soul itself is happy, we look totally different. When the soul itself is miserable, how do we look? And so this generosity of spirit, to share with my human family, but to share with wisdom. And I remember a lovely story where a couple came to one of the daddies and said, "We're not getting on very well. Should we get a divorce?" And Daddy looked at them and said, "Yes, you should definitely get a divorce, but what you should divorce is ego and anger and fear." And so she got to the root of the problem and uplifted them. This is what wisdom does. Wisdom doesn't just look at the surface. Wisdom provides real, lasting solutions, because it's solutions that enable transformation within. And we all know that when we feel different inside, the whole world looks different to us. And I think the other thing that soul consciousness gives us is a lot of courage. Courage to use that wisdom, courage to do what is right. In those quiet moments, in soul consciousness, in connection with God, we know what is right. We all know what is right. We all have a conscience. And I always feel that if I really listen to my conscience, it's not going to fail me. But I need courage to listen to my conscience and to act on my conscience, to do what is right. And I feel that soul consciousness gives us this inner strength. And of course, it is the possibility of the connection with God that really enables us to put all these things into practice. If I'm soul conscious, it means that my consciousness is on a certain wavelength. A wavelength that will enable me to tune in to the divine, to God. That supreme spirit, supreme soul, supreme consciousness, whatever term you like to use. It'll enable me to tune in so that I can begin to draw on the abundance of God. And what is that abundance? It's love. It reflects. I, the soul, reflect God, right? I'm not God, but I reflect the qualities of the one who created me. Love, peace, truth, purity, absolute joy. And I know for myself, whenever I connect, I experience it's like, let's say, a current or a stream of energy coming to me. And it's not just enemy in the sense of, what did I say, enemy? Energy in the sense of power, but in the sense of a loving energy, a transformative energy. Even I would say a healing energy. And if I look at the world today, I look at the people I interact with, and of course we're not interacting with too many people at the moment, but more and more gradually, you see the need for this healing energy, this loving energy, because there is so much fear around. And fear leads to defensiveness, fear leads to aggression. Fear is a very destructive emotion. Yes, we need to be careful, cautious, sensible, all of that. But we don't need fear. And that connection with the divine can help to transform that fear into courage. Courage, yes, to do what is right, which we talked about, but also courage to be who I'm meant to be. And it's very interesting that when we do have that sense of soul consciousness, that connection, that inner strength, we're able to take responsibility in a way that we couldn't before. Responsibility maybe was scary for me. And, taking decisions. Do I have a right to do that? Yes, it's important to consult. Yes, it's important to work cooperatively, all of that. But ultimately, there are always decisions you have to make in your life. And in soul consciousness, I have the ability to take those decisions with responsibility. The connection with God is something that we need to nurture and develop. And for that we need to spend time. Time with ourselves, time with that Divine One. And for this it's important to meditate, contemplate, again, whatever word you want to use. It's important to spend time every day, because this is a new consciousness we wish to nurture. The morning and the evening are the best times. Morning, why? Because if you spend time in soul consciousness, in connection with God, in relationship with God, then you're beginning the day with spiritual nourishment on the inside. You have some resources with which to face the day. And not just face the day and survive, but thrive, flourish, give. You know, we are in a society where people are taking much more than giving. They want something, not even on a gross level, but they may want your approval or respect or love. Am I going to go through life seeking these things? Or will there come a point where I have so much abundance that I'm able to give these things? And that's a very, very different dynamic. And so having that spiritual nurture in the morning time prepares us for the day ahead. So if you can spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes, even longer, contemplating on these things, you will begin to feel different from the inside, and your whole attitude and perspective will be different as you move through the day. And you'll find situations that before would have made you irritated or fearful won't have an impact on you. Being strong on the inside enables us to move beyond influences and to be able to see with greater clarity, and to be able to give something. When there's a difficult situation, what can I give? What can I do that will help, that will uplift? And at the end of the day, to wrap up the day, to understand, what have I learnt today? Not what went wrong, but what have I learnt? And to be happy at what I've learnt. And then sleep with a clear mind. And in between, during the day, pauses, maybe once an hour, just to stop, just to remember, just to refocus. So I think now it's time for us to spend some time together in meditation. And I will share a few thoughts as they come to me. And so sit comfortably, feet on the floor, relax the body and the mind. And let us go on our inner journey of soul consciousness. I take these few moments to be with myself. To give myself time to be myself. For that, gradually, I need to step aside from all the different labels and identities that up to now have defined me, and to become free, to move into that state of soul consciousness. And to do that, I draw all my attention, awareness to the center of my forehead. To the seat of consciousness, the seat of the soul. And I visualize that tiny spark of light that is the self. And as I focus on that light, gradually all other awareness melts away, and I become that light. I become free, free to be myself. And what do I find in this new awareness? I discover my original state of being. I am a being of peace. I am a being of love. I am a being of truth. I am filled with joy. I had lost touch with this beautiful original self. And now I embrace it again. I have this inherent goodness. It is my being. And in this consciousness, it's natural to connect with the divine being, the Supreme Soul, with God. The unlimited source of peace, of love, of truth, of purity, of joy. I feel the healing energy of God's love embrace the soul, the being, giving me strength, giving me courage, transforming me, filling every one of my qualities with power and strength. Everything that I need, I can take from this divine, loving being. And naturally, those qualities will flow out into my surroundings, into the world. Uplifting, sharing that goodness. Now gradually I return to the awareness of my body, my surroundings, but I don't lose that connection. I remain in this awareness. And I allow that inner goodness to guide me in all that I do. So thank you to everyone for being with us. It's been nice to be with you, to share these things, and I hope that you'll be able to use them in your everyday life and really find the solutions that you need, and to be able to share with others. Thank you, and Om Shanti, I am peace.